So how does it impact our way of working was the primary discussions. And add to that the social distancing, many people working remotely. So how does this really affect work? What's the impact on the agile frameworks that have been rolled out? Right? So this were primarily the discussions. So this is when we at Agilemania thought of starting this webinar series. It is going to be more as a continuous engagement and an experience sharing session, right? And then we said, let's try and do this. It was during this one of the discussions we said, I was thinking, let me reach out to Pranjal, right? To say, this is what we were seeing a lot of those things. Is can I get some help from you, right? So Pranjal, he immediately appreciated our initiative, and he was kind enough to say, I'll back you up in this particular initiative and provide all the necessary support to make this series productive for all of us involved. So thank you for that, Pranjal. And Pranjal is somebody I know doesn't need any introduction, but just in case if we have folks who are getting initiated into the world of SAFE, Pranjal Swarup is the Country Business Development Manager at the Scaled Agile Link for India and ASEAN. He comes with a rich experience of about 16 years, working across functions like channels and alliance, business consulting, digital transformation, and also service delivery. And in the current role, he has been helping build and grow Scaled Agile partner network in these regions, and to help enterprise realize the full potential of their transformation initiatives. Yeah. So with that, I think I'll hand it over to Pranjal for the very first session of our series. And this particular hour is focused on the topic, safe at the time of pandemic. Yeah. So over to you, Pranjal.
Thanks, Preet, for the introduction, and thanks everyone for joining. I see we have 30 plus or 35 plus attendees in the room today. So that's a good number. So as Preet mentioned, that I work with Scaled Agile Inc., and maybe I'll just put this on the presentation mode. And I don't know, sometimes people get confused, that is the Scaled Agile the name of the company, or SAFE the name of the company. So the name of the company is Scaled Agile Inc., and I work for Scaled Agile Inc., and we are the providers of SAFE. And as you would know, that SAFE is the world's leading enterprise agility framework for building better systems, increasing employee engagement, and helping the enterprises achieve their business outcomes better and faster, right? So this is, as Preet mentioned, this is first of the webinar wherein we are going to bring to you the experiences from different industry leaders working closely with Agilemania to give you the landscape view of how SAFE has been helping the enterprises around the world during this pandemic crisis, to be specific. How do we pivot, and how did the things happen or go in the last couple of months? And my intention today is to give you that 30,000 feet overview about the changes which have happened and the ways in which we have been helping the enterprises. And then, of course, from there on, subsequently, we will build up, we'll go into more details in the upcoming series of the webinars. So with that, let's get started. I'd like to start with a question. And I guess all of you have access to the chat window. So my question to you is just to see the understanding that, what do you think of SAFE? Is SAFE a certification provided by Scaled Agile Inc.? Or is SAFE a framework and a platform that help enterprises transform? Or you're not sure? So just go into that chat window and type in your answers as A, B, or C. We'll take 30 seconds over here to see what responses are coming in. I see a lot of B's. In fact, I see a lot of B's. One of them says A and B. Go on, don't be shy. We'll take another 15 seconds. Where have I lost my cursor? 10 more seconds to go. Just trying to get the understanding, like nobody is going to get penalized even if you don't answer it right. This is a collective learning opportunity. So I see a lot of B's over there, and thanks for sharing, everybody who said B. Yes, I like the last answer. B and SAFE provide certification also. So I guess most of you are correct in saying that Scaled Agile Framework is, is a tool or a methodology or a platform, the way that you see it, that help enterprises transform their journey to accomplish their digital transformation or business transformation goals. And of course, as part of that journey, learning is a crucial activity. And as part of that learning organization, we encourage everybody to get trained on SAFE, and hence SAFE certifications happen. So SAFE is not a certification itself. There are different types of certifications that you would have heard of, like leading SAFE, SAFE Scrum Master, SAFE Product Owner, Product Manager, implementing SAFE, and so on and so forth. So those are the different kinds of certifications. All of you who said B, sure, you're right. Now, let's look at when everybody talks about the transformation. I think everybody understands the digital transformation landscape really well, right? It will be, I will be repeating myself if I say that, hey, you know what, every business is a software business and everybody is going through a digital transformation, being disrupted by a competition or by market, right? So I think everybody understands that every enterprise right now need to have digital strategy, need to have digital assets and approach to be able to service the customers. But still, lot of us enterprises, we always assumed either we procrastinated or there are different factors which we considered that maybe we are not so sure about our digital transformation approach. Maybe the digital transformation approach we are taking is okay and we don't need to reconsider that. Or maybe the digital transformation in itself is years away. We are shipping, we are manufacturing, we don't really need to worry about digital is an IT thing. We don't need to care about that. So those kind of mindsets existed in the market. And then comes COVID-19, boom, right? Everybody has to transform. And the ones who did not transform or were not able to transform with the speed which others were able to, they have to actually go through a tougher route, right? So now given that we understand about this crisis and its role in the digital transformation, let's also take a look at what does that actually mean? What does the digital transformation itself mean? Because the transformation definition depends on who you speak to. And I really like this representation, which I have taken from Bain and Company. And they divide digital transformation under 4 pillars. The first one is digital strategy. And what that simply means is that what is that future state of business that I would like to achieve? How do I ensure that I plan future backward and still be able to go present forward, right? Where should my business be going in the X number of days or X number of months or X number of years, right? So that's the part of digital strategy. The second part is the business model. Of course, that's crucial because we have to deliver value to the customer. So are we able to capture the raw needs of the customer and create our business around that need and be able to deliver value to the customer? So that comes their business model. The third part is enablers. And I think that's where it gets really interesting because, again, the people who consider that digital transformation is just an IT thing, sure, it definitely requires digital technologies like data and technology and so on and so forth. It also requires your operating model. And what is the operating model? The operating model is your way of working. How do you collaborate together in either the isolated or the distributed environments that we are working in right now? And what are the steps or principles that we use to ensure cadence and synchronization across the organization? And that becomes part of the operating model. So that's an enabler. And the last over here is the orchestration. Now, with all the things which happen as part of your digital strategy, your business model, your enablers, and so on and so forth, you still have to transform, right? You still have to have a roadmap in place wherein you would go and make your transformation successful. So how do you manage that change or a transformation? That's where the orchestration part comes into picture. And in the context of Scaled Agile Framework, 2 points over here are extremely crucial because that's where SAFE focuses on. Of course, it has impact on the other factors as well. But the 2 components where it directly impacts is the operating model and the change. All right. So keep that thought in mind, and let's understand, why do digital transformations fail? If the digital transformations, if we all understand that this is what digital transformation is, and you would expect all the leaders and practitioners like yourself today to understand the business strategy, your digital strategy, your business model, and so on and so forth, why do the digital transformations still fail? And in fact, they fail so much and so badly that looking at different studies, you will be surprised that almost 70 to 80% of these transformations fail. And that's no hidden fact. Like billions of dollars of hard-earned money go down the drains every year, and these transformations fail. And there are certain factors which I would want to bring your attention to in this context. And this is something which I picked up from the Altimeter Digital Strategist Survey, and this is a couple of years back that they did this. So the key drivers of digital transformations that they pick up on their survey while surveying the executives around the world is the evolving customer and employee behaviors and preferences, right? What is your customer demanding? How your employees are working towards achieving that value? What is the competitive landscape? I think it's also equally important to understand what is competition doing. And the Darwinist theory that the survival of the fittest is definitely apt during these times, but I think even more apt is the survival of the fastest. How quickly am I able to adapt to the changes and respond to those market disruptions so that I can be competitive in the market landscape? And then what are the growth opportunities in the markets? How quickly can I identify those opportunities and tap into those, and so on and so forth, right? Investment and lack of expertise and so on and so forth. So these are other drivers. And there are some challenges that they also call out while speaking with these executives. And these challenges are related to that not everybody understands the digital transformation or the components of the digital transformations really well. They think that, oh, maybe, I don't want to get myself trained on AI and ML and automation, or even agile way of working, or SAFe for that matter. I think I know everything, right? And when you assume that, hey, I'm a leader, I've been working in this organization for 20, 30, 40, 50 years, what have you, that's where things start getting really interesting, because you may not know what might be really required to adapt to the quickly changing business environments. Digital transformation is viewed as a cost center, that, well, it's a project that we are running, it's an IT thing, and we are going to invest only these many dollars. I would want everybody to know about SAFe, for example. I don't want them to get trained on SAFe or certified on SAFe. And there's a difference between, if you were to fly a helicopter, and if I just give you a manual, you can read through the manual all your life as you would want. I don't think you will be successful in flying a helicopter. You would have to get trained by an experienced instructor. And that's the difference between being trained and certified at times. And company culture, of course, when you get in this journey throughout the company as a single enterprise, the culture reflects well rather than doing it in different pockets, and so on and so forth. And if I look at the ways in which they measure the success of these digital transformation initiatives, you won't see the number of lines of codes or deployed in the production, or number of applications deployed to productions or delivered to the customer, and so on and so forth, right? So it just talks about operational excellence. It talks about customer centricity. It talks about the business performance, right? That's where the real money is: the sales, the revenue, profit, the market share, the customer engagement, right? So the list goes on. So let's keep in mind that these are, at the end of the day, the measures of success to the digital transformation that matter. And the lines of codes delivered, number of certifications I have on my resume, and other things, those are very trivial and maybe just a step into that direction. Well, that's good, but why do transformations still fail, right? That's the question. So let's look at another perspective, and that's where we start seeing some light on this issue, right? And let's consider, when you start as a business, when you're a small business, consider a startup, right? You have a CEO, CIO, CTO, CMO, right? So all these people come together, founders and co-founders come together, and they start organizing themselves around customer, and then they start growing their network around that single customer, or maybe a couple of customers to start with. They're very customer focused, working 24/7, trying to make the customer successful. However, over time, what happens is that the CMO grows his or her own organization, the CTO grows his or her own organization, and so does CIO, and so on and so forth, right? So of course, I'm not saying that that's not necessary. That's definitely necessary to bring in the stability and execution. You grow the hierarchies, right? Now, from the network that you had around the customer, you start building those hierarchies, you start building those departments. You have a marketing department, you have an IT department, you have operations department, you have sales department, engineering department, what have you. But the problem actually comes at that point of time. You start building some undesirable traits in which you execute the value delivery. And the traits actually are that we get too much structured in those hierarchies. We do not like to talk across departments. We operate across silos. And this is well understood in this representation that I really like, is that, let's say, consumer banking business, the strategy is decided, the initiatives and funding is decided at that level. And what gets handed over, right? It gets handed over to you as a vendor or a partner, is that you go and execute the value across silos. So you are in PMO, you are IT, you are a QA, and your operations, maybe your sales, and so on and so forth. You do your own stuff. You hand off your deliverables to the other department. And that's where you start experiencing a lot of difficulties in operating across functions. Politics start creeping in. There are a lot of handoff delays and what have you. And these are nothing but you're executing the value as a project. And the structure keeps on growing, and you might sometimes say, oh, well, that's there, that little thingy is our little agile project. If there is nothing agile about all these hierarchies, right? So what happens as part of that? That you were supposed to be customer centric. Now you're growing your hierarchies, and the customer centricity just goes for the toss. And our poor little customer is just lying down over here at the left. It's the customer who suffers, and then the business suffers, and the organization suffers, and that goes on. Now, what we could do, because the business environments are changing, and I think anybody who did not appreciate the fact that the business environments could be changing really rapidly these days, I think the crisis that we are living in right now has made us all acknowledge the fact that, yes, the business environments can change like just this, and you will have to be really quick to adapt to the market changes. And what the thought leadership says is that the world is now changing at a rate at which the basic systems and the structures and the cultures which we have been using over the last century or so, it just is not enough to help us succeed. There is just so much of demand being placed on these structures, and they can't bear the burden of all these rapid delivery requirements that we have, or rapid value delivery requirements that we would have, right? So what do we need to do? We need to rethink the organization. And I'm sure some of you, or if not all of you, would have seen this, that, work across functions, organize yourself around the value to the customer, don't operate in silos. You come across, you form self-organizing teams. If you are part of PMO, IT, QA, testing, sales, engineering, what have you, you come together as the same team and you deliver the value to the customer. How many of us remember this Moto Razr flip phone, which came almost like 2 decades ago? I'm pretty sure a lot of you would have been aware or might have even used that Moto Razr phone. But something that you may or may not know is that Motorola during those days were actually struggling to create a flagship product. They were struggling to keep the customers and the investors happy. And what they did was they actually called in their experts from different departments in their Chicago lab. And these people were from engineering, from sales, and from marketing. And they formed a cross-function team. And they started brainstorming on the ideas. And together they came up with that flagship product, which still people remember that, right? So when you come together, you innovate. You are not handed off the requirements or the features to be developed. You come together, you innovate, you iterate on the value, and that's how you achieve the speed of innovation while still working in hierarchies. So we need to rethink the organization. And as again, John Cotta says, that the solution is not to trash what we know and start over. Instead, we can reintroduce a second system, one which would be familiar to most successful entrepreneurs. So it's now bringing the hierarchy and the network system together and calling it a dual operating system. And this is something that SAFE provides. SAFE provides the functional hierarchies of the structured organization and brings in the value stream network and combines both of that together, giving you the best of the world operating model for your enterprises. And this is how it looks like. I'm quite sure some of you would have seen this big picture. It looks quite confusing from outside, but if you start understanding this, I think it becomes really easy. And my role today is not to go into all the technical details. I think that is already available on Scaled Agile Framework and other resources. But my role today is to help you understand and appreciate why is this big picture so relevant in today's time. And also we have a new goal with this SAFE 5.0, which is the newer version of the framework. The new goal is business agility. And what does business agility mean? It just means that it should give you the ability to compete and thrive in the digital age by quickly responding to market changes and emerging opportunities with innovative business solutions. So the keywords are highlighted over there. Quickly responding and providing business solutions, not just the lines of code, not just the applications, not just technical solutions, but business solutions, because that's what drives the success of the digital transformations, right? And I really like this representation from one of our customers. They showed this really nice video. So watch this closely. And what they do is that they try to explain this, that you have a traditional org structure, different teams. Now they come together in a siloless unit to set new goals, which you do during the PI planning. And then you form those self-organizing teams, agile teams, to execute the top priorities. And then you converge again every 10 weeks or 12 weeks to reconsider and replan those activities. And in essence, this is what it looks like, right? So you have development, finance, people, marketing, legal, operations, engineering, sales, what have you, right? All these agile teams organize themselves around the business solution to the customer. You create those solutions and systems, and you use lean agile principles to deliver the value to the enterprise, right? Excuse me. So that's what, in essence, business agility is all about. And then, of course, the second part that you would recall from the earlier slide about the digital transformation, it's important that we help orchestrate the change. So we provide the implementation roadmap as well. And this is again available on scaledagileFramework.com. So you can refer to that over there, and we will be talking to these hopefully in the subsequent webinars in the series. So like any initiative, consider this like an orchestra. If you have to deliver symphonies using different teams of instruments and so on and so forth, you would require 7 core competencies to achieve business agility. And it starts with team and technical agility, agile product delivery, and enterprise solution delivery on the execution side on the left. And on the right-hand side, on the strategy side, it involves lean portfolio management, organizational agility, continuous learning culture. And then the base always has to be the lean agile leadership. See carefully that it's not leadership, it's about lean agile leadership. And I'll come to that point in a moment. So let's go through them one by one quickly, again, at a very high level. Team and technical agility, I think everybody understands that you need to have agile teams, and not just agile teams, but SAFE recommends that you have team of agile teams, which you call agile release trains. And these business and technical teams build business solutions, right? So that's the minimal construct that we have as part of SAFE, what we call essential SAFE. And the name is quite apt because those are the essential elements that we consider for an enterprise to take a step into the direction of business agility. So that's that. You see that this is available on scaledagileFramework.com. It talks about that essential SAFE configuration, and there are large SAFE, portfolio SAFE, and full configuration as well. And then there are agile teams as part of the essential SAFE configuration. Agile product delivery is the second competency. And I think we all understand what DevOps is, and SAFE's approach on DevOps and continuous integration, continuous deployment, continuous exploration is that you're continuously working with the customer and be able to deliver and deploy the value to the customer on demand, right? So it's more about a culture and a process rather than a role or a technology from SAFE's perspective. And that is extremely important. Now, what we figured out while working with the customers that if you are not capturing the requirements from the customer really well, then you might be releasing the value to the customer, whether it's on demand or at a certain cadence, which may or may not be quite appropriate to the customer. So that's where the design thinking approach comes into picture, where we have customer centricity now built into the framework. And it says that we have to have a double diamond approach to it, where you diverge on understanding the problems and converge on your understanding, and again, diverge on developing the right solution, and then converge back again to create a desirable, viable, feasible, and sustainable business solution for the customer. So now you bring together both the principles of design thinking and DevOps to create agile product management. And delivery happens in all the iterations. It's not a thing which happens once in a PI or what have you. Lean portfolio management is now on the strategy side, on the right-hand side, an extremely important fundamental, which not many leaders in the organizations right now implement so well. And it's all about aligning your strategy funding to execution, right? On the top, as you see that you have strategy and investment funding decisions that need to be made. So what are your strategic themes, and how do you translate that to execution? How do you fund the value streams and not the projects? And what kind of tools that you use, for example, like participatory budgeting, to prioritize different equally competing value streams, and which value stream to fund and which not to at that point of time. So what are those principles and practices that you use to be able to optimize your funding, optimize your operations, achieving operational excellence, and create a lightweight lean governance model? So those things are prescribed in detail by SAFE. And it's extremely important because this is again taken from one of the publications by Harvard Business Review, that only 8% of leaders are good at both the strategy and execution. And that's again one of the factors where the digital transformations are failing. If they can't decide which value stream to fund when, and how does that percolate or impact the entire organization, you're just setting yourself up for failure. And if that's the only percentage of people who understand both strategy and execution, I think we definitely need more awareness and more principles and practices in place with wider range of enterprises to increase that understanding and increase the chances of the success of the digital transformation initiatives. Organizational agility, that's another core competency. It's all about creating lean thinking people and agile teams. You have lean business operations where you organize yourself across value streams and not across departments, and you find out what are your handoff delays. You optimize the entire process end to end, and increase your efficiency, reduce your handoff delays, increase your or rather I would say optimize and maybe even reduce your time to market, so on and so forth, right? So that's all part of the value stream operations. And also strategic agility became extremely important, at least during this age, that we had a continuous market sensing going on. And most of the organizations, what they might have been used to is that they decide the strategy at the beginning of the year, or maybe every 6 months. And then they say, okay, well, that's the strategy. Let's go ahead and execute on that. and comes COVID-19 or any similar crisis, you would have to reconsider everything, and maybe you are not in a position to reconsider or pivot and course correct, because your strategy might have been decided and that might have just been frozen across the organization. So how do we quickly adapt to the market conditions and quickly or have a strategic agility in place to innovate quickly and to implement the changes quickly? That's part of the organizational learning competency. Continuous learning culture is extremely important, as I mentioned earlier, that we have to create the organization learning culture and ensure that everybody grows together. You get certified in the organization, that's good, but what do you do next? Where do you use your certification in your organization? What kind of certification are you even taking at first place? And how do you intend to use that in your organizational construct? Are you going to influence others to move towards safe, or are you already doing safe and you're going to help them in that journey? And how does that create the DNA of innovation through IP sprints, experimentation, relentless improvement, and so on and so forth? And not the least, and I would say that definitely the platform on which the organizations are built upon is all about the mindset of the leadership. That do we really practice what we preach, right? Do we really commit ourselves to the transformations? And some of you would have read this, and we refer to this again and again. Edward Deming was supposedly one of the most renowned management guru in the last century. And he wrote a book, I guess, that came out in 1980s, Out of the Crisis, very well known, one of the bestsellers book. And in that, it's actually a vignette from that, in which he says that there are actually two VPs of a manufacturing unit talking to each other about their own units, and says that, hey, VP1, I see that your manufacturing unit is doing really well. Would you mind if I come and see what are the kind of practices that you're doing? Because we are part of the same company, and maybe there are some learnings for me to have, and I can get them introduced in my manufacturing unit as well. So VP1 says to VP2 that, sure, absolutely, you're more than welcome. However, if you can't come, send no one else. It just means that you yourself as a leader has to commit to those initiatives. You just can't say that, hey, you know what, we are doing lean, we are doing agile, we are being agile, and we practice business agility. But like, are you really practicing that yourself? What is your role in that leadership, in that transformation? So it's all about those mindset and principles. And that is also part of Scaled Agile Framework, where we go through in detail about those principles. And some of those principles that SAFe prescribes are these 10 principles. I'm not going to go through in the details over here, but I think these are, have grown over the past years. In the recent configuration, the last one, organize around value, it always existed, but we never used to call it out as a specific principle. But now it's been introduced as a specific principle. One of the SAFe principles is organizing around value. And then, of course, all the other principles that you see over here, we go through that in detail during our workshops and help you implement those. There's another recent article which I read of Steve Denning, and Steve Denning is one of the, I guess he's a professor at Harvard, or used to be professor at Harvard Business School, and he's again one of the management gurus and a bestseller author. And he wrote a recent article that Agile isn't new, and what's new is the C-suite embracing it. So the leadership, the C-suite have started appreciating the fact that they need to be lean agile leaders themselves. And if they don't do that, then this is again coming from his article where he compares the market capitalization over the last 5 years for the companies like Microsoft and Amazon, where the senior leaders embrace agility, as compared to IBM and GE, where the senior leaders did not embrace agility. So you see that difference over there, that if the leaders embrace agility, that helps the entire enterprise move forward, that helps in your business, helps you achieve those business metrics and goals, which we referred to earlier during our discussion today. All right. This is another excerpt that I wanted to share with you, because these are tough times. And McKinsey there was a really nice article which came out recently about the measures for rapid revenue recovery, because hey, everybody is about revenue at this moment, right? Nobody cares about how many applications or lines of codes or lines tested and what have you, right? So it's all about revenue and new market capture and customer success that matters at this point of time. So this is what I took from them. And I really like the way that they have structured all these things, from on the left bottom, slow impact, on the right hand side, fast impact, and then on the x-axis, high EBIT impact. And EBIT is your earnings before income tax. So that means just your revenue, that how much impact does it have on your revenue. So all the things that you see on the time to impact, like pricing and promotions and e-commerce and analytics and marketing, sales, productivity, these things are good, but these things cannot be done in silos. Like you can't just go out as sales organization and start doing your own pricing, and you can't just as a marketing organization go out and do your own promotions, right? So you have to work together. Marketing has to work together, sales has to come together, pre-sales, engineering have to come together. You might have to even rely on your IT for demand planning and creating new tools and assets. And maybe it also has to be driven at the top, because maybe you need to do some brand repositioning, or changes in the customer success or customer experience, and maybe you need to have mergers and acquisitions, and so on and so forth. And there were a few recommendations across the three tables over there of start, stop, and fast forward. And I picked a few over here which I think are relevant to our discussion today. They say that stop assuming that the old ways will come back, right? It's picked up verbatim from that article. They also say stop relying on traditional org structures. What that article also says is that start thinking about how to organize work for a globally distributed workforce. Also start locking in practices that speed up decision making and execution during crisis. And fast forward best practices around collaboration, flexibility, inclusion, and accountability, and fast forward your transition to business agility, right? I, for a moment, thought that they are promoting Scaled Agile Framework, but then McKinsey being McKinsey, they are framework agnostic. They don't go ahead with a named framework, but all this is something which Scaled Agile Framework provides for anyway, right? So, so we talk about all those things, and I just wanted to use this to give you different perspectives that even different thought leaders, even if they don't talk about SAFe, they use the same principles at the end of the day, because those are the principles essentially which will help you survive and thrive during this time. And that's where the core values, the 4 core values of Scaled Agile Framework, which you call it, that alignment across all the teams, transparency and visibility across all the functions and the delivery, built-in quality, that we are not checking the quality of our deliverables at the end of it, but we introduce the processes such that they they inherently have the quality of or quality baked into those, and then be able to execute the program and pivot and change directions and so on and so forth. So all these core principles, 4 core principles of SAFe, as we call them, or core values of SAFe, my apologies, that we call them, those come into handy, and those help you move forward. Not sure if you have seen this slide, but just a quick recap on what SAFe is. More than 600,000 people trained across 110 plus countries, 20,000 plus enterprises across the world using SAFe, more than 350 or 360 partners now across the world. Provides different training and certification for business leaders, tech teams, business teams, coaches, what have you. And then we have featured in the different surveys as the top or the leader in the market for enterprise agility or business agility. And then we also always talk about that, there's always a debate that whether, how does this compare to this certification, that certification? I think that's even a non-conversation, right? It's always about what is it that we can do with this operating system or an operating model and help the enterprises transform. So business results over method debates and all the empirical evidence of the value that we have been able to deliver for our different enterprises around the world is all available on the case studies section. As you can see the numbers on the right-hand side. And this is again alluding to the recent study of Gartner, which was published, and it's available on scaledagile.com as well, which says that SAFe is the most used and considered enterprise agile frameworks. They compare it against other frameworks as well, as you can see on the screen. And again, this is not me, this is not Scaled Agile, this is Gartner saying, and there's an elaborate report, the principles that they use. And this is not just one of the graphic that they have multiple such graphics, all consistent with the same message. So go ahead and read that in case you haven't, and use that to convince your leadership. And hopefully that helps you move forward. And every activity, every event is incomplete without a call to action. So we have a call to action. In one of the webinars recently, and this was done by IMD Business School, that's one of the elite Ivy League school in Switzerland, I think is ranked number 3 or 4 by Financial Times around the world after Harvard and Stanford and INSEAD. So they were discussing about why do we see different approaches to the recession from the leaders. And they say that there are 2 mindsets that they have found speaking to the executives during the recession. They're offense-focused moves and they're defense-focused moves. The defense-focused moves are around employee reduction, operational efficiency, or both employee reduction and operational efficiency. Whereas there are offense-focused moves where you focus on market development and assets investment, or both, right? And what they found, what actually impacts your business the most, the top line the most, the revenue the most, is the best approach, which is the operational efficiency combined together with the market development and asset investment. If you do employee reduction and still do market development, that may be good, but not the best approach. If you just do employee reduction and asset investment, that's a bad approach. So, they compared, you can see the metrics over here. The best approach is to combine operational efficiency and invest into both market development and asset investments. And that's again, going back to the lean portfolio management, being efficient operations, combining your strategy with execution, and then be able to deliver technical solutions or business solutions quickly, be able to gather quick feedback, and be able to pivot quickly with strategic agility, and deliver the value to the customer by organizing yourself around the value. So that is something which I recently learned myself, and I really like that. Sorry for the bad resolution, because I just picked this up from the webinar that they were presenting. And that translates that we all have to evolve to business agility, right? There is no question about surviving without having business agility. And business agility is going to help us get to the next new normal or new abnormal, the way that you would want to call to. And of course, that will give you all the elements that we have just discussed to be able to pivot and organize yourself around that value. You have access to our partner network, and Agilemania, who is the host of today's webinar and the series of this webinar. They are partners with us with presence in India and ASEAN. So go out, reach out to them, see how they can help you with your training and coaching requirements, and helping you implement SAFe in your organization and your consulting requirements, and being able to create a lot of those platforms for you. With that, I think I would like to also show you how we did it, right? Because I think it's extremely important to preach, but I think it's also important to tell the world that how because we drink our own champagne, we run on SAFe as an organization. We did a few changes, and I'll show you, if you're able to view my screen right now. In case you don't, just give me a thumbs up or thumbs down, but hopefully you're able to view my screen right now. This is a SAFe community platform, and I think that's one of the most or one of the least considered value of any SAFe certification. Because when you get certified, it's not just a plain paper certification or just a badge that you get. You get access to all the plethora of extremely important tools and enablement resources that will help you for your own professional development, that you can use as a SAFe consultant in your organization, in your enterprise, to help them go through the transformation. So this is the landing page that you see. There are a lot of resources over here. You get your toolkits and templates, and I'll go in there for a moment. So in the toolkits and templates, what you will see, because when you start implementing SAFe, you would rather be focusing on facilitating those activities and helping your organization go through that journey rather than creating these different toolkits and templates. So all the toolkits and templates that you would ever require to run a safe transformation, all these are readily available to you. You can just download them and just start tailoring them for your business requirement. But coming back to the main point that I wanted to show you is that, for example, this banner that you see, we pivoted on digital assets. We also pivoted on a lot of processes. And I'm not going to go into all the details, but just the high level thing. We have our PI planning. Sometimes people feel that, oh, it sounds like waterfall, that you're planning just once in a 3 months, but that's not true if you actually do SAFe the right way. And pandemic hit every business around February. And that's where by end of February, we pivoted. And during March, we transformed ourselves, and our PI planning was actually in April. So even before getting into the PI planning, we were able to pivot and reorganize ourselves because of our strategic agility. So for example, we pivoted to that we are going to allow only skilled agile partners to deliver safe public classes, because that's where the promise of quality comes into play. We also invested in creating all these collaterals for the remote events, because, as you may or may not have seen, but all the SAFe activities used to happen in person. These are all classroom-based workshops. You have to be there face-to-face in classroom, in person. And what we figured out that there are different courseware which we need to change. They have to be remote delivery enabled. While working on the courseware could have taken a long time, we quickly created some guidance and collaterals to help our SAFe consultants facilitate these activities. And you would see that there are a bunch of guidance over here for remote training, the remote training aids, the case studies and the workshops, the hands-on activities that we used to do during our workshops. We were able to create the remote aids for them so that you can take that classroom experience online, whether you're delivering it through Microsoft Teams or Mural or Miro or Zoom or what have you. And you can just quickly download these and start using that in a virtual environment. And then similarly for distributed SAFe events like Inspect and Adapt and distributed PI planning. And in case you still have questions, you have access to the bunch of FAQs. And that goes on, right? There are other policies as well, which we pivoted on. And that's where the strategic agility came into picture, that we were able to quickly understand where the market is going to. And even before most of the organizations, they still were going through the business continuity planning activities. Even before they could complete those activities, we were ready with all these resources and processes in place to be able to help the enterprises, sustain and thrive their transformation initiatives. So yeah, that's a quick one that I wanted to show you. And that's about it from all of us at Scaled Agile. We are happy faces, as you can see. This is a big data picture from Washington, DC, one of the summits that we delivered over there. And that's about it. I'm happy to take any questions if you have. Let's see, what questions do you have?
Hi, well, there's one question that has popped up on the chat window. I think that I'll just ask the question out loud here. So it says, now everyone wants to get updated, but before 5 years, we used to get the certification cost reimbursed from the company. Now we must pay from our pockets. Also, SAFe is priced at a higher price in the market. So this COVID and pandemic, do we really need to spend this much from our pocket? Does Scaled Agile taken any initiative to contribute to the community at this? And I think Rohit also seconds that question, saying, it looks like he's asked this question to you a couple of weeks back, but would love to hear from you again.
Good. All right. So that is a good question. Now, the sense that I get from this question is that it sounds too pricey for you right now. And given that you're investing from your pocket. So I think first point to consider is that why has the organization stopped funding this? because they don't see the value. Why don't they see the value? Because something happened, and that something is actually, you have to diagnose that problem. Maybe somebody, didn't have a right opinion about the approach, and they didn't want to go ahead with it. So that's where the problem is, right? We have to diagnose that problem and be able to consider what happened over there and why did the organization stop funding this. And if they don't see the value in that, or did not, would they see the value in that right now? And if yes, then if you are able to bring us into that conversation, we can support you, speak with your leadership and see what are the challenges that they face and how can we work together. Not selling, but helping them out at this point of time, right? That's one point. The second point is, what is the Scaled Agile's contribution to the community? And the contribution to the community is that you have access to all the digital assets, which I just showed you. So maybe you had that question written over there before I showed that, and good that I showed those assets. Because these are the assets that would help you as a consultant, as even if you're a practitioner, you couldn't have done anything in the remote world because all the SAFe courseware was actually in person. So we created those digital assets for the enterprises and for practitioners and consultants. Go ahead and use them. That's the value. That's the contribution to the community. If the question is that, are we going to decrease the prices? No, of course not. It's what you get, what you pay, or what you pay is what you get. So we need to clearly establish the value that you would receive. And there are different ways in which we anticipate doing this. So let's have an offline conversation and try to see how we can help your enterprise achieve that. SAFe is definitely not expensive. It's what you do right now. And I think I was reading this book, I can't recall which one. But I clearly and vividly remember this example. What he says that there was a person who was actually supposed to buy a bicycle. And when he went to the shop, he said, show me the best bicycle that you have, and shows like $150 bicycle. And this story is actually quite backdated. And that point of time, the best of the bicycle was actually $150. And he said, well, that's too expensive and I'm not going to take that. And then he shows something around $50 and said, yeah, well, that's under my budget and I'll take that. And he takes that budget, and after a few days, the brakes fail. So he invests another $10 or $15 into the brakes, or something, the paddle brakes or the seat brakes, and he invests another something. And in the next 6 months, he had already invested around another $100 into the bike, and the cost was now equivalent. So it's all about the cost versus the investment. And then he dropped that bicycle and bought that $150 bicycle, which ran smoothly for the next 3 to 4 years. So it's all about what you pay is what you get. There are multi-million-dollar businesses relying on SAFe, and a few $1,000s of investment is nada in return of that. There's so many case studies available on Scaled Agile. If you have any questions, reach out to us offline. We'll have an interesting conversation around that.
Okay, thank you, Pranjal, for that. So now I have another question from Vivek, whose question is, the SAFe toolkits, is it available for only SAFe certificate holders or to the general public too?
No, you have to be a SAFe certified member to get access to the community platform. You may get access to the toolkit if you would like to by working with your SPC in your organization, but then what would you do if you're not SAFe certified? So, maybe, and that's what we encourage, at least I haven't seen many enterprises who are actually doing SAFe the right way, that they don't have SAFe certified teams or people. So yeah, you have to be a SAFe certified member in order to have access to these toolkits.
Okay, thank you. I have a question from Anshuman, whose question is, in portfolio SAFe, the themes and the portfolio vision enablers, and epics are dealt by management, who no longer has in-depth understanding of the product vision at the development delivery level. So why don't you bring the product owners to the lean board, which he's saying lean board, he means portfolio Kanban, where we plug in the KPIs enablers. I guess this is where most enterprise hire consultants get to this point and fails eventually.
So yeah, that's an interesting one. And that's more about lean portfolio management. And I clearly see, I think you yourself might have alluded to the answer, that, if the leadership is not aligned with the product vision, So we don't, product vision would happen at a program level and safe, right? What you have at the organization level is a portfolio vision where you plan your horizons. And with those vision, you plan, you have different value streams and you decide the funding for those value streams. And it's extremely important for the product team to participate in those value stream exercises where the portfolio team meets you over there and decides where the funding is most required using participatory budgeting. So if you have the portfolio vision and your portfolio Kanban in place, there is no way that you can miss out that, it's a very dangerous situation. Look at this, right? That your portfolio says something else, your product vision is something else. There is no alignment between the strategy and the execution. So I don't know if I would have time to go into the details at this point of time, but then if you have a clearly charted strategic theme that drives the portfolio vision, that drives your OKRs or objectives and key results, which then helps you meet your strategy with the execution. And then at the execution standpoint, you have your value streams, and then your product teams are working as product management with the product owners from different Agile teams. That's how you have the visibility across the organization. I don't know if that answered the question, Anshuman, but I would encourage you to read the Lean Portfolio Management article on scaledagilepringboard.com, and you can always reach out to Preet and I for further discussion.
Sure. So Pranjal, we are on the end of the time box, and I know how busy your days are. So thank you, Pranjal, for all the insights. Yeah, I think my personal favorite was how you described the community access and how SAFE took an agile approach to respond to the pandemic itself. So it was not all about just preaching; you practice what is being preached. So that was definitely good. I also have a couple of other favorites. I think the one wherein you showed the small red box in the maze of hierarchy, saying, yeah, that's where our agile is. But also how agile transformations are being considered as a cost center. Yeah.
Right.
So those are a few things that I could quickly relate to. But overall, thank you very much for your time, Pranjal. This was definitely insightful. And I'm hoping the people who have attended have got enough insights. And for the few questions that we really didn't have time, what we are going to do is we are going to try and get these answered offline, and we will definitely get back to you.
Yeah.
And just because the webinar has ended doesn't necessarily mean we cannot interact. You guys have the email IDs with you from the organizers of the webinar. Please do not hesitate to write in your questions. Yeah, and as a follow-up of this webinar, you would get a small feedback form coming from Agilemania itself, and it's in the request. If you could just quickly fill those things up. I don't think it should take more than 5 minutes of your time, but this is really important because this is how as Agilemania and how this is how we are going to shape up this entire webinar series. Right? You guys being there for the first series, your feedbacks are absolutely important. Yeah. So please do send in your feedbacks and help shape this series in a way which is really valuable for all of us in here. Yeah. So thank you, Pranjal. Thank you once again, and thank you for everybody who attended it. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your questions, and we will connect back with you for the next in the series of Safe Thursday by Agile.
Right. Thanks everyone
Thank
for joining.
You.
Stay safe. Thank you, Preet and team.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you. Bye.
Thanks, everyone.